Truckers of Reddit. What spooky things did you witness on the road? Story number 1. I saw a young girl being beaten in the back of a car badly. Closed fists to the face repeatedly clear as day. Even though it was night, my lights lit up their car. Followed them hitting the horn, got number plate and rang police, but they got away. Police called me the next day to say they had investigated and was told the girl was having a medical emergency and was fine. Story number 2. My dad drove a truck between Edinburgh and London and tells this story often. He was driving down the motorway and looked to his right, saw a woman with a Miss Trunchbull bun, as he describes it, staring at him with a terrified expression from a car next to him. Before he really knows how to react, the car pulls off at the next exit and my dad, although shaken, carries on. About half an hour later, a different car with a different driver pulls alongside my dad, with the same woman in the passenger seat with the same expression on her face. My dad thinks, "Fuck this," and plans to pull into the next services to report, as even if it's nothing/misunderstanding, better to be safe than sorry, right? Anyway, the car disappears before he can get any details, plates, etc., and he thinks there is no point calling the police with no details, so he carries on driving. Literally about 4 hours later, almost in London, yet another car pulls alongside him with the same woman, same Miss Trunchbull hair, same terrified expression, except this time she appears to be screaming at my dad through the window, so my dad pulls over into a lobby and calls the police. Apparently, they have received 3 other calls about the same woman in the same area in the last few minutes. It is unfortunately anticlimactic, as he never heard anything more about it, but he didn't see her again, and although he kept an eye on the news, didn't see anything about it. Hopefully it's just a giant coincidence. Who knows? Story number 3. Not a trucker, but I had a college teammate from Miami tell a story that he swears on to this day. He and his girlfriend were making the drive to Naples late night on a 2-lane road through the Everglades and had been in a line of cars behind an 18-wheeler for multiple miles. She fell asleep and he was surfing for something to listen to on the radio. Only one station came in clearly enough to be tolerable, so he gave it a listen. The DJ came on and said something along the lines of, "The stars are extra bright in the Everglades tonight. If you're driving through there, pull off and take a look." He said he normally wouldn't even think of it, but for some reason felt compelled to that night. He woke up his girlfriend. She was annoyed and didn't want to, but he convinced her it would be worth it. They stopped and just took in the stars for 5 to 10 minutes. He said it was the most amazing sky he's ever seen. They get back on the road and drive another few minutes and come across a massive accident. The truck they were following had jackknifed and took out a handful of vehicles that were following. He said there are multiple fatalities, but I've never been able to find a news story about it to confirm. Probably would have been in 2005. They most likely would have been involved if not for that random DJ on the only radio station to come in that night. Story number 4. I was still in my first year or so of driving. I had a friend with me, and we were talking, so I missed my turn. I ended up having to backtrack a little, not much at all, and as I came to the proper light, we saw a semi-truck car hauler, but the car hauling part had swung off the bed and was in the next lane. Had I not had to backtrack, we would have been in that lane when the rig swung off the truck and likely would have crushed us in the little Corolla we were in. Since then, I've always believed a missed turn or a delay is just the universe's way of keeping me safe. I don't get angry or impatient. I'm grateful for being in the position I'm in and safe. I've had other times a wrong turn saved me, and honestly a couple of times where it didn't. Both those times taught me profound lessons I'm grateful for. Story number 5. A trucker I know claims he was driving a logging truck down a remote dirt road in the middle of a forest at around midnight when a dog-man creature walked out in the middle of the road. It stared at him for a few seconds, plainly visible and well illuminated by all the auxiliary lights on the truck. Then it just took off and disappeared into the woods on the other side of the road. He's not a superstitious man, and he rejects everything supernatural as fiction, but he 100% believes that what he saw that night was real. I've only heard him talk about this twice. He was very drunk both times he opened up about it. Just talking about it rattled him. He was clearly uncomfortable thinking back about that night. Story number 6. There's the legend of the Michigan Dogman. I grew up in Dogman country. My uncle and his friend, both experienced hunters, and my uncle special ops for the military. His friend, a sheriff's deputy, came back up to the house blubbering like babies about a creature in the woods. My uncle's friend took off, and over 30 years later, still won't even look in anyone in my family's direction, let alone speak to us. Whatever they saw scared him that badly. My uncle finally got it out to my granny and grandpa that they saw something resembling a Bigfoot, but had the head of a dog/wolf. They unloaded both rifles and both their pistols on the thing and hit it multiple times, and the creature just ran off. We have 5,000 acres of land, so it is hard to search every inch, but my grandpa saw the fear in his son's eyes. So he told my granny to stay in the house, not to let me or the dogs out, grabbed a few ranch hands, told them to riffle up and saddle up. They were going out in groups to search every inch of the land for this thing. They came back well after dark, cold, tired, and hungry. I was about 5 or 6 then, so this is all I remember. They found tracks, but not the thing. My uncle spent the rest of his life tracking it. He actually died on the same property, in the area where he saw the thing in 2010. He never talked about his experience much, but when he did, you could see the fear on his face. This is a man that spent 23 years as special forces for the military. He wasn't scared of much, but whatever was there terrified him. Many believe it's a skinwalker. Some believe it's a type of Bigfoot. Others believe it's completely bunk, and some don't know what to think. I wouldn't be so quick to mark that trucker's story as bunk. Story number 7. My dad used to drive trucks, and he used to tell a story of his scariest time on the road. I'll try to do the story justice, Dad. So he drove trucks while I was about 5 and my brother was 3. He did so entirely to make money to take care of us, which also means that he needed to be able to actually make it home to his kids at the end of the day. He was driving up the side of a mountain that apparently genuinely resembled one ripped right from a Bugs Bunny cartoon. It spiraled up, has these rickety, flimsy metal guardrails that had smart cars been invented, they still would have not prevented even them from vaulting over the thing, let alone a semi. It was insane o'clock, and my dad was super tired, but he wanted to push it so he could get home faster. What happened next woke him right the fuck back up, so much so that if I recall correctly, he had to actually take an hour break on the side of the road just to collect whatever was left of his sanity. He was making his way up the mountain when on his radio he hears what he swore was "flying Frenchmen," followed by a whole bunch of hootin' and hollerin'. My dad apparently wasn't confused by the exclamation for long, as mere seconds later, 2 full-sized, seemingly fully loaded semis came barreling down the mountain on each side of the road. My dad had to make a quick decision, cliff or rock face. There was hardly a shoulder, but it beat almost certainly crashing into the side of the mountain, so he did what he could to avoid them the best that he could and went for the bank. My dad said that he turned the wheel as quickly but carefully as he could toward the extremely narrow embankment on his, did everything he could to avoid skidding, and narrowly avoided the closest fucker. He apparently also narrowly avoided jackknifing the truck, and the scariest part of all, his own semi had tipped during the procedure. All of the wheels on the one side of his truck got air, and he was sure he had just tipped the truck down a bloody mountain. Also, these 2 assholes could have a fucked up game of chicken. So, the scariest thing my dad said he had ever seen while driving, a pair of flying Frenchmen.